There's a lot more to tell, but there'll be plenty of time later.
Take me to the Alpine room.
Oh? Are you unhappy here?
I want to see the dawn.
So poetic a pleasure. What were all the world's charms to mighty Paris when he found that first dawn in the arms of his Helen?
And when do you expect the signal accepting your terms?
Any time before midnight tonight.
Thy dawn, O master of the world, thy dawn. For thee the sunlight creeps across the lawn. For thee the ships are drawn down to the waves. For thee the markets throng with myriad slaves. For thee the hammer on the anvil rings. For thee the poet of beguilement sings.
Helicopters, we've been attacked!
Get our positions covered!
Who are you?
Bond. James Bond.
I think you're a sexist, misogynist dinosaur. A relic of the Cold War.
Shaken, but not stirred.
007 reporting for duty.
These are the 00 Files.
Welcome to the podcast of the 00 Files. My name is Don, and I have a cracking interview for you guys. A few weeks ago, I drove up to a little town on the Dutch coast called Egmond aan Zee. It means at the sea, and it's really beautiful up there. It's a popular vacation area right next to the beach, and with the lovely sand dunes and cottages, it's just picture perfect there. And I went there because it's where Martijn Mulder lives. And Martijn is the author, or co-author I should say, of the book On the Tracks of 007, which was published in 2008. And in his book, Martijn provides detailed information on as many James Bond locations as possible. It's really a must-have for location hunters. So this podcast just opened with a lovely little scene from On Her Majesty's Secret Service in which Diana Rigg's character Tracy recites a beautiful poem, originally by James Elroy Flecker. Now, I won't repeat it here because I really can't compete with Dame Diana reciting English poetry. So if you want to listen to it again, you just have to rewind the podcast back to the beginning. Obviously, I have a good reason for selecting a scene from Majesty's to start with, and that's because the film celebrates its 50th anniversary this year. And for that special occasion, Martijn, together with a lot of help from others, organized an insane party that lasted for 9 days. It spanned 2 countries, and it brought hundreds of James Bond fans, cast and crew together on top of a mountain. At the end of May and the beginning of June 2019, OHMSS 50 went to Portugal and Switzerland to celebrate Majesties. And for the Switzerland part of the journey, I was there. Now, a few weeks ago, I went to Martijn's place and we just sat down, we had some coffee, and we looked back and reflected on the whole experience. We swapped stories and, well, basically we relived the entire thing. And I thought you might like to listen to our conversation. I know it might be a bit weird listening to 2 Dutch blokes speaking in English together, but we did it for you listeners because people from all over the world came to the 50th anniversary of Majesties, and we want everybody to be able to enjoy our stories. Now, if you were part of the group, hopefully you will recognize our stories, and this podcast might even rekindle some of your own memories. And if you weren't there, you might experience some jealousy or feel being left out. And if that's the case, pay attention to the end of our chat, because Martijn has told me there will be future trips in years to come. So, I'll stop rambling on now, and I'll play the song Journey to Draco's Hideaway, and then afterwards you can listen to my interview with Martijn Mulder. Welcome, Martijn, to the podcast of the 00 Files. And I specifically wanted to call you Martijn because a few weeks ago we were in Switzerland and so many people asked me, how do you pronounce his first name? Because everybody called you Martin, right?
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but it's Martijn.
Officially it's Martijn, but the I sound, I think that's a typical Dutch thing and nobody can pronounce that. So people just turn it into Martin, which is fine.
Well, I'm very happy to be here. I'm actually sitting in your house at your dining table in the wonderful city of another perfectly good Dutch name, Egmond aan Zee.
Yes.
And I drove over here for about an hour and 15 minutes, and we are about to discuss something that you organized.
Exactly.
The
yes.
50th anniversary of On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Yes.
How are you looking back on that?
Ooh, it was amazing. I mean, everything that happened just happened the way I hoped it would happen. Obviously, there are a lot of things you can control, but there are also things you cannot control. Things like the weather. And everything just went the way it was supposed to be, or I hoped to be. And it was beyond everybody's expectations, also beyond my expectations. But it all worked out very well, so I'm very pleased with it. And from all the reactions from the people that I got, I think everybody had a great time there.
I'm sure they had. And I was one of them. So before we delve into that part of the conversation, I was just realizing when I drove over here, about halfway, I was passing Schiphol Airport, close to Amsterdam. And you have this lovely view if you drive over this highway, and you see all the airplanes there, and you see the air control traffic tower. And it made me want to go on a trip again.
Yeah, it does that to you.
It does that to you, yeah. And you see the airplanes flying over the highway and everything. So we're going to talk about specifically the weekend that you organized in Portugal and also in Switzerland. But you have traveled quite a lot besides these two trips. You are a location hunter. Yeah, before we're going to delve into the interview, let me start with the introduction 00 questions that I always start with. The first one is... which Bond film have you watched most recently?
That must have been On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Okay.
I don't watch the Bond films that often anymore, but
I know them by heart.
Exactly, yeah. But that one I just had to watch just to make sure I didn't miss anything, or so.
Did you make any notes? Like, I have to look for that beach or that tree or that stream?
Most of the locations were already known, but we were still looking for one, actually. And that was the place where the Bell fight took place, the shed. In Bern.
Yeah.
That was a big mystery, and I always thought that was in the studio, but apparently it was filmed in an actual shed in Bern. But we sort of figured out where that was.
But it's not there anymore.
No, it's been demolished.
Oh, okay.
New building built.
Then you can also say, it was here. I'm positive. Nobody knows.
No, that's true. That's true.
Okay, so that was Majesty's. Second question is, if you can play any character in the next James Bond film, which part would you love to play? And why that part?
Must have been the villain. Must be the villain, because I think that's one of the most intriguing parts you can play. You know, you can go all in and do whatever you like. I think that's one of the most interesting parts.
You're a bit villainous, you think?
I'm not, but
no?
I don't think that really matters.
But you like to be an evil guy, okay. And what would your plot be? Would you like to destroy the world? Or?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to keeping the world at ransom again.
Hijack some nuclear weapons. Yeah. Okay. So, final question is, if you could either interview Ian Fleming, Broccoli and Saltzman, or John Barry, who would you choose and what would you ask?
I would love to have met Harry Saltzman when he was still alive. So that would be my choice, Broccoli Saltzman, because I think they're intriguing people.
What about Saltzman, though? Why specifically Harry Saltzman?
I think Saltzman is very underrated.
You mean his role, his active role?
I think he was by far the most creative of the two. And all the weird ideas that make the early Bond films so spectacular came from his mind. So I would love to have discussed that with him.
You've met his son?
Yep.
Not the same?
Well, he has pretty wild ideas too, but that probably runs in the family. No, but that's different.
Yeah, it's different, isn't it? Yeah. Well, we might talk about him because I'm sure he'll come up when we go through the celebrations of Majesties. So let me go back in time a bit. How did you become a Bond fan yourself?
Ooh, that's a funny story because when I was, I think, 8 or something, my dad at some point came home with 2 very large cardboard boxes filled with illegal copies of movies. There was some sort of illegal video store that sold his whole inventory, and my dad just bought the video cassettes.
Back in the day.
Yeah, and so suddenly from never ever watched a film before, I became this guy who's seen like 200 films. And one of the films inside that box was Moonraker.
Just that one?
Only Moonraker.
All the Bond films.
All the Bond films. That was Moonraker. Because it was around that time. It must have been 1980 or something.
Right, so that was just out of the cinema.
Exactly. And I still wonder how on earth there could exist a copy of that so soon. I still haven't figured that out. But anyway, I got that, and it had double subtitles. It was both in Dutch and in French. Mm-hmm. But that never bothered me. I watched that over and over again.
Maybe it was a Belgian tape.
It could be, yeah. Probably.
Well,
yeah.
I'm not sure.
So that was my first.
That was your first film.
Yeah.
And you were hooked.
I was hooked, and then the whole video store era exploded, and I started renting those films. And at some point, I discovered that they had this people who didn't own a video player, they could rent a video player together with, I don't know, 6 films or something. They had special prices for that. I quickly discovered that if you rented a video player and you connected it to your own video player, you could.
You have to, and you can make copies.
You can make copies of that.
So, I can see where this is going.
Yep. So within, I don't know, 6 months or something, I owned the complete collection of James Bond films.
Did you start your own video store or something
I didn't,
like that?
I did not. No, but that was my, I watched them over and over and over. It must have been around the time that Octopussy was in the cinema, because I remember on Dutch television there was a special that was called 21 Years of James Bond, and it was broadcasted on Veronica, the TV station. And it was a special about all the earlier films, and it ended with the new film that was Octopussy. And I watched that over and over and over again, and it was amazing, you know. And then in combination with all the Bond films that I had at the time, that started it.
That's a good story.
Yeah.
So, but what is it about 007 that you find so interesting or that pulls you in?
I think the same what everybody else likes. The fact that you normally live in your own world, and then suddenly you see somebody who travels the world to the most beautiful places, and who gets to meet the most beautiful women at the most beautiful hotels and houses, and you're just pulled into that. It's obviously something that's very appealing to all men, I suppose.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I mean, I can relate to that. Yeah. Sure, yeah. So if I ask this question to different people, they give different answers, obviously. Some say it's the music, others say it's the beautiful women, or it's the cars, or it's the gadgets, or it's the sneaky stuff, the espionage things, the spycraft and stuff like that. Others say it's the nostalgia. And you said it's the beautiful locations.
It is, yeah.
That's something that's really...
the traveling always very appealed to me.
Yeah. In fact, so much so that you wrote a book about that.
Yes.
It came out a while ago now, I think. 2008?
2008.
Before Quantum, right?
Yeah, just before Quantum. Or it tied into the Quantum premiere or something like that. But that obviously was a process that took me about 15 years or something.
15 years,
wow. I had this book by Stephen J. Rubin, the James Bond films, and that was one of the first books that actually talked about behind-the-scenes stuff.
You know, actually, I just finished that book.
It was really good. And
he's not too kind on Moonraker.
He's not. No. And that's true. But it had all these little pieces of information about where these films were made.
Yes.
And it wasn't all correct. But I suddenly figured out that maybe it would be fun to try to find out where all these films were made. And it was before the internet became very big. So there wasn't very much to go on. So from all these tiny pieces of information, I just started to compile a list, and I was one of the first, I think, to make a James Bond website, which was just one gray page, actually, with only text, no images. It was really simple.
That's the way you do it.
That's the way you do it. But the funny thing is, I did get response from people. They apparently found it somehow.
And you had your email address on there or something.
It definitely wasn't called On the Tracks of 007 back then. So it just had some unpronounceable long address. And people somehow found it, and I got response to that. And people started feeding me with information. pointing me to other stuff. So that list grew and grew, and it became bigger and bigger. And then at some point, I reached the age where I decided to go on a holiday without my parents. And then I thought maybe I should go to Jamaica. It's a nice destination. That's where I started looking for those locations.
That was your first Bond location.
That was my
you went
first
to
Bond
Jamaica.
location. And
that's like right on top of everybody's list, probably.
It is, and it was very difficult because Jamaica. I had no travel experience at that time, not on my own, and I found Jamaica very hostile. All these people in the streets, and they were looking at you, and when you walked by, they only saw a walking dollar sign, and I felt very uncomfortable there, even though it was an amazingly beautiful country. But before we went to Jamaica, I got in touch through that website with Dirk Kloosterboer, the German guy who I thought was Dutch, but he turned out to be German with Dutch ancestors.
He's like your German equivalent.
Yeah, well, he had been to Jamaica recently, so he gave me some tips, and which I could follow up on my holiday. When I came home, I had very lousy photographs of whatever locations I found because I never...
I mean, after the trip?
After the trip, because I never knew I was going to do something with it. At that point, it was still the experience.
Right, you were just going for yourself and enjoying Jamaica.
And I made some photos, and most of the photos had either me in it or my then girlfriend in it.
You didn't want to publish those in the book.
Well, that's not something you could use in a book. But the relationship with Dirk stayed, and we discussed things, and we started traveling, and we started working together, and we were traveling individually, but also together to locations. And one of the most amazing examples, I always think, is Istanbul, for instance. We were looking for the locations from Russia with Love. There was no information at all. We only had the film, which you put a VHS cassette in your video player. We played it, and we pressed pause.
But you can't make a screenshot or a screen.
No, we had old-fashioned photo cameras, and we took photos of the TV. We had those photos developed.
I like this old school stuff. This is great.
It's unbelievable when you think of it. And so we went to...
They had to wait for weeks for the photos.
We had to wait for weeks. And then in the end, it turned out some were blurry or some had a big finger in it. But in the end, we went to Istanbul together with, a bunch of maybe 20 screenshots. And we just started walking around and asking cab drivers and people, do you know where this mosque is? Because in my eyes, all mosques look the same.
Exactly, yeah.
But there's always somebody who knows, who says, "Oh, that's there. That looked totally different back then." And we managed to find all these locations in this very old-fashioned way. And it's really funny when you think of it, when you compare it with how you would do it today. It's such a different world. But then again, it was way before the internet became big, and way before companies like MGM and Eon even considered having a website or information online.
So what does it do to you when you find the mosque, for instance? You see the exact same thing.
That's amazing, that feeling. Even today you still have these certain location hunters who want to be the first one to ever find something. And I can fully understand that, because it's an amazing feeling to walk up there and think, oh my God, this is it.
And they want to find the exact same shot or angle from the camera and see what it looks like.
And I never had that, I just had, I wanted to be at the location, and I just took a pretty general photo.
Mm-hmm. Like soaking up the atmosphere?
Soaking up the atmosphere, and I never went to these places with like 20 screenshots from 20 different angles or something. So that was never my thing, but in the end, we decided, maybe we should do something with all these photos and all this information, and we figured maybe we could do a book about it. But it was difficult to get that published because, we were not very known writers. It was not something we had done before, and also it wasn't really a travel book, and it wasn't really a James Bond book. It was difficult to place for a publisher, and they all thought that the market would be too small. And so in the end, we just shelved the idea and traveled some more. And over a period of 15 years, we gathered all this information. And the website grew into onthetracksof007.com, which was a name that Dirk came up with. So finally, we decided to self-publish it. Or I decided to self-publish it, because at the time, Dirk had sadly taken his own life.
That's really sad.
It is really sad, absolutely. And it was mental health problems that caused him to do that. And it's one of those things, when you don't have that, you can't understand it. So...
But you've known him for quite a while.
I know, yeah. I've known him for like 6 or 7 years, something. And
you have good memories of him.
Good memories of him, absolutely. But in the end, there was so much material, and after his death, I figured maybe it should be published anyway.
Yeah.
To at least do something with it.
You have a in memoriam in the book.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the book itself, on the tracks of 007, it's divided into different chapters. Every chapter is like a journey that you could do.
Exactly.
If you go to Spain, what if you go to Venice?
Yeah, and I mostly followed my own itineraries. Because it pointed out a way to do it. To cover as much locations in a certain time, and I think that really worked. You could use the single chapters easily on.
Yeah, to plan your holidays. Yeah, that's good thinking. Now, you had already visited the Majesty's locations.
I did
prior to the celebrations of a couple of weeks ago. But you had this crazy idea of whenever a James Bond film turns 50, you want to do something special, but not every James Bond film.
No, well,
how does this start?
We went with the Skillmans on a Thunderball 50th, which they organized to the Bahamas.
That was 2015.
2015, and a year before, the Swiss James Bond Club had done a Goldfinger Reloaded in the Swiss Alps,
of course,
which was a small but very nice event. And
so other clubs or people were thinking about this idea.
Yes, exactly. And it only started when I figured that I wanted to take people to Japan. I had always wanted to do that, and that's what I did in 2017, which became the 50th anniversary celebration of You Only Live Twice.
That was your first big...
No, I've done other tours. It all started in 2004, but it was always with very small groups.
So to Japan?
Japan was the first big one, and that was 40 people, which is quite a lot to
keep track of.
Yeah, to take through the subways
together,
of Tokyo, in and out of the metros, and that was quite a challenge.
How many did you lose?
None. Never lost anyone. No. The good thing is that all the people that went there already knew each other from other trips, and it's a.
There are not that many nerds out there.
No, it's a rather small family that can afford. I'm talking about a $7,000-8,000 trip. Without the flights,
Without the flights?
Exactly. So, Japan was very expensive, so it wasn't for everybody. And that group that went there, they kind of knew each other, and so they could keep an eye out each other.
That's really good.
That was really, really good, yeah.
And then you started thinking about Majesty.
Exactly, and I had already done, in 2004, a small group tour to Portugal. So I knew what I could do there. And I obviously also knew that in the past, the Piet's Gloria people, the Schildhornbahn, had already organized some events up there, James Bond related, when they opened the Bond Walk of Fame and when they opened the Bond World. So I knew they were probably going to do something for the 50th anniversary. So the first thing I did actually was go to Switzerland and make contact with Schildhornbahn to see if we could somehow work some sort of cooperation.
So just to clarify, the Schildhorn is the mountain on which Piet's Gloria is actually built.
Yeah, and somewhere in about 100 years ago or something, they built a cable car up the mountain, and that was done by the Schildhornbahn company.
They pretty much run the cable car system and Piet's Gloria now.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, just to summarize, you had 9 days of celebration.
Yes.
With a weekend first in Portugal.
Yes.
And then the next weekend in Switzerland.
Yes.
And people could go to one of these weekends or to both the weekends, whatever they liked.
Yeah.
You provided itineraries for the weekends themselves, and people could do basically what they wanted in between?
No, not exactly, because the whole thing of offering separate tickets to people only for the weekend or for the full tour, that became a big logistical challenge, because I had to figure out things to do for all these people during their whole stay. And the only reason I did it was because I wanted to cater to all budgets. If you want to stay at the Palacio, you are going to spend more money than if you're staying in the hotel next door. And I wanted to offer people both those options. So at some point, different programs, different itineraries for different groups started to be developed. And there was a weekend in Portugal. The next weekend was in Switzerland, and the VIP tour, as we call it.
That's the people that paid the most
Exactly.
to be on the trip.
And they did the full 9-day tour.
And they had something in between as well.
Exactly. They did all their stuff in between.
Well, I only had the Switzerland weekend, so I traveled by myself, and I did some location hunting on myself as well before I joined the group in Peace Gloria. So I have some idea, but I don't really have a clue what happened in Portugal. So what can you tell me about that? How did things go? How many people were there? What did you do?
Whatever happened in Portugal stayed in Portugal.
Okay, what can you tell me?
No,
I feel like, what is it, Section 26, paragraph 5, old man.
Exactly. No, Portugal was a lot of fun. And one of the only things I could make it work was to not only get in touch with the Schildhornbahn people for the Swiss weekend, but also with the Hotel Palacio people for the first weekend. The Hotel Palacio is in Estoril.
Is that the hotel where Bond is picked up by the henchman?
That's where he's
when
staying
he wants to
in
go
the film.
golfing?
And that was also the place where the cast and crew stayed during the filming. So those were two big sponsors for the event. And
what do you mean by that? You didn't have to pay anything?
No, maybe sponsor is not the right word. They were big supporters of.
They wanted to collaborate.
Yes,
okay,
exactly.
Yeah.
So the first weekend they organized a big celebration on Saturday, where we had special guests, and they had a lot of people from the British Embassy over. The British ambassador was there, so it was a pretty high-profile event. We had a great 3-course dinner, which was funny because I had actually ordered a buffet for everyone, and they figured that since the British ambassador came, you can't just give them a buffet.
You can't stand there with his plate.
They upgraded it to a 3-course dinner, which was actually pretty nice, and they added some music, musical performance, and there were some people who made a small speech, and they added a DJ, which eventually turned out to be the first moments that I ever seen a James Bond dance on the dance floor, because George Lazenby was going all the way on the dance floor. That was a lot of fun to witness.
So George Lazenby was there.
George was there, and
he's now nearing his 80s, I believe.
Yeah, he's 79, and he will become 80 this year. We had George Lazenby there, and we had Terence Mountain there, who played Raphael, one of Drago's goons.
That's the guy with the glove, right? With the one-gloved
exactly,
hand.
Yeah, who fights Bond on the beach.
On the beach, right, yeah.
Right after he
Big guy, tall guy.
Tall guy, and he's such a sweetheart, and he's so open to all the fans, and he really enjoyed his whole stay. And then we also had, but that was sort of a bonus, we had Silvana Henriquez there. And Silvana is played one of Blofeld's Angels of Death. She's the Jamaican girl. And she doesn't really have any scenes in Portugal, so I hadn't invited her to Portugal. But she
showed up?
She just wanted to come along, and she paid for her own trip.
Oh, wow.
Which was actually very nice.
It's always a good excuse to go to Portugal, I think.
Exactly, yeah.
So how many people went there, you think? How many people showed up?
We were there with about 69 people.
69 people.
Yeah, and then during the first event, there were like when you add all the embassy people, and I think we were with 130.
Wow!
And they had a big cocktail party in the garden, hotel garden. They had an Aston Martin DBS there.
Well, the same from the film?
No, not the original one. But that's another funny story. I knew there was somebody in Estoril who had a DBS because they used it before at the hotel with James Bond related events. Mm-hmm. And on one of my reconnaissance trips to the hotel, when I arrived at the hotel a year ago or something, I went to my room and it overlooked the garden, and there I saw this Aston Martin DBS.
You just happened to see it.
It was just there in the garden, and I thought, oh my God, this hotel really embraces the whole event, and they must have put it there just because of me. And after a few days, it was still there in the garden, and I thought, I don't know. So I started asking around, and it turned out it was for some sort of event, and it had nothing to do with me at all. So that was kind of funny. And so I knew they had the car in the area. And I talked to the hotel about it, and they said, yeah, no problem. We know the owner, and we will make sure it will be part of the event. That's one of the things that a hotel really helped with, arranging local things.
Right.
So about 3 or 2 months before the event, I notified the hotel, and I said, "Oh, please don't forget to arrange the DBS." And they said, "Oh, yeah. Thanks for reminding us, and we're gonna call the guy." And then 2 days later, I got an email, and it said, "Well, we got some bad news because the owner sold the car."
Oh dear.
So there was no DBS, and I was like, "Oh my God, it's on the front."
But there's a new owner.
Well, that's what I thought. And but how are you going to find that one? So I contacted Aston Martin in Lisbon.
Right, they have an office there.
They have an office there in Porto and in Lisbon. And I thought, maybe they can at least find somebody with a DBS, because they must have records of all the owners. And because you're not, if you own an Aston Martin, you're not bringing them to Joe's garage around the corner. You probably bring them to Aston Martin for maintenance. So after a few days, they contacted me and they said, "Well, sorry, we can't find anyone with a DBS." So I had actually given up on that idea of having a DBS there. So it was a big surprise to me as well, with that when I got to the hotel for the Portugal part of the trip, that they had actually arranged a DBS, and it wasn't in the olive green color. It was a dark blue, but still it was amazing. And it turned out that a few weeks before, they had an event from the Portuguese old-timer club.
And there happened to be a DBS.
They just happened to talk about it. And one of the guys who in the event said, "Hey, we know somebody in Porto up in the north who has a DBS." So the hotel contacted him, and they probably gave him a room for the weekend. And they asked him to come over.
That's amazing. That's quite a coincidence.
It is. Yeah. It was one of those
lucky break.
Exactly. It's one of those things that you just have to be lucky with.
Yeah. Now, something I saw online, because there are thousands and thousands of photos, is that you went to the actual beach.
Exactly. That was part of the VIP tour on Monday after the weekend. That was one of the main reasons I wanted to have cast and crew stars at the event, because that was one of my wishes. I wanted to have George Lazenby and Terence Mountain back on that Ginshow beach. And when we got there, our tour bus, we had visited some other locations before, and we got to the beach, and there was our little crew rental van with Anders in it. Anders, Fred, the Swedish.
Anders is the manager of George.
Yeah, and he was my artist liaison. He has all the contacts with the stars, and he does a brilliant job with that. And Anders drove our guests to the beach. And when we got out, it was such a huge sandstorm there. We were like sand-blasted. It was really terrible. So I walked up to George and Terry, and I said, "Listen, guys, if you don't want to do this, I'm fine with it. I can fully understand, no problem." And George blinked his eyes, and he said, "Oh, give me some sunglasses." And I quickly took off my sunglasses and gave them to George. So that problem was solved. And apparently Anders had also informed George that Terry really wanted to do that, be back with him on the beach. And so George was in for it. And he said to Terry, "Come on, let's do it." And they just walked off the dunes. And fortunately, when we got a bit lower on the beach itself, it was less windy. It still was windy, but it was much less than up on the dunes. And these guys just had a lot of fun. And
did they start fighting and punching each other in the water?
George gave some sort of karate chop, and it was really funny. And I had explored the beach a couple of days before, and I had completely by accident, I stumbled upon 2 old slippers. They were like somebody lost them or something, and I had hit them under a boardwalk. So I ran over there and I picked them up and I handed them to George, and I said, "George, is it any way possible that you can hold these shoes?
Deliver the line, George."
Deliver the line. And it was so funny because George doesn't really remember that much about the film. He was looking at them, and I said, "What am I supposed to do with that?" Deliver your line. And he's like, "What line?" And there were 30, 40 people on there with cameras. And George blurred something out like, "Oh, this never happened to the other fellow." And he didn't really get the feel with the original scene. But it was still fun, and he said it, and he was there, and he was such a good sport.
Yeah. It's a shame I had to miss that. Oh, well. And I also saw that you went to the spot from the end of the film.
Yeah, that was pretty good too. That was on a Tuesday. We first went to the bull farm with George and Terry. The place
where they have Draco's birthday.
Exactly.
Right.
First, it's a big estate, and it has a main house where they filmed the wedding sequence, and next to it is like this private bull arena where they filmed Draco's birthday party. And we took George and Terry there. And Terry hadn't.
He didn't shoot any film.
No, well, he was part of the wedding as one of the wedding guests, but he wasn't at the bull ring scenes because he was apparently at that time he was practicing for the beach fight, rehearsing. And so George and we had to explain George what he filmed there, and it still didn't really ring a bell, but he was fun. It was nice for the fans, to have him back at that location.
It hasn't changed that much, has it?
It hasn't. No, they repainted the walls because in the film they're all bright white, and apparently that drove the bulls crazy. So they added a yellow color on the inside. But it hasn't really changed, and it is not in a very good state. I don't think they're using it a lot anymore.
You can just go there.
Yeah, it's the estate is like a little village, and it's really big, and it has like a town hall in the middle where you can just buy refreshments, and it has all these houses where people worked, where people lived who work on the estate.
Right,
but it's not that very inhabited that much anymore. Not like the days when they filmed there. So that was first the first stop, and then the second stop was the Arabida National Park, which is like a mountain ridge with a road leading over it, and that's
like a very narrow, windy road.
Yes, exactly. And I've been there before when it was very foggy and you could barely see anything. And now this time we were there and it was like blue skies and sunshine, and it was such an amazing view of the whole surrounding area.
And that's where they pull over the DBS to get the flowers removed.
Exactly, right. And there's only one parking spot, quite large.
So you can't miss it.
You can't. No, you
can't miss it.
You can't. if you know what you're looking for, you don't miss it. But the road goes up for a long time, and then at some point you reach the highest point, and then you go down again, and it's the first stop after you go down. And while we were driving up there with the bus, I suddenly realized, I thought, what if there are two cars parked there at that parking? The bus will never be able to stop there. And since you can't, the bus can never turn there, we might have a problem. But fortunately, there was only one motorbike who just sort of moved aside, and the bus could park exactly in that parking space.
Just fit it, probably.
That was one of those lucky things, which I honestly never thought about before. So we all got out, and we made our photographs. And George, I said to George, what are your personal recollections of filming this scene? And he said, well, I was finally rid of Diana Rigg.
Oh, dear.
Which was a good laugh. That's just George, and he's a lot of fun. But it apparently was also the very last scene they filmed there. So George was actually happy that the film was over, because at that time, he knew he was not going to make another one.
Yeah, it had been a long production.
Been a very long production, and he was just happy to be to put it all behind him. But the funny thing with George is, he has two teenage kids, twins, living at home in LA, and he wherever we were, he was always FaceTiming them. He just called them, and he started showing them where Daddy filmed, and that was really cute to watch. Yeah. It was really personal moments, and fortunately, everybody realized that and just let him do that without bothering him. And then the amazing thing happened. We were just walking around there, and suddenly this motorcycle cop turns up, and we're like, this is just like in the movie. Out of nowhere, there comes this motorcycle cop, police officer on a motorcycle, and he stops. And we're just looking at him, and he looks at us, and he starts shouting at us. He was so angry. Apparently, we were all in the road, and honestly, it's like it's not like you're on Highway 1 or something. There's no traffic at all there. So I still quite don't understand why we all had to go, but everybody had to get back in the bus, and he was so angry about it. But it was a really funny moment. So in the end, everybody got into the bus, and he just started waving his arm, and boom, he drove off. We're like, what happened? It was really
no
funny.
Sympathy.
Oh, no sympathy at all. But it was funny that actually at that exact moment, a motorcycle cop turns up, just like in the film.
Well, him then, Irma Bund with her machine gun. But oh, what are the odds? Man. So, and then you went on your way to Switzerland.
Yeah, we had 1 day off. Everybody could do whatever he wanted. And then the next day was the individual travel day. And most people were on the same flight in the end, because there aren't that many flights from Portugal to Switzerland. So we all made our way to Switzerland, and the next meeting point was Bern, the Schweizerhof Hotel.
Yeah, and now I can finally join in the conversation because that was my first stop.
And that's where we ran into each other.
Yeah, just by happenstance, really. That was amazing. But before we get to Switzerland, what I'd like to do is listen to a song that I associate with Portugal, which is Louis Armstrong's We Have All the Time in the World.
We have all the time in the world, time enough for life to unfold all the precious things love has in store. We have all the love in the world. If that's all we have, you will find we need nothing more. Every step of the way will find us with the cares of the world far behind us. We have all the time in the world just for love, nothing more, nothing less, only love. Every step of the way will find us with the cares of the world far behind us. Yes, we have all the time in the world just for love, nothing more, nothing less, only love.
Right, so we get to Switzerland.
Yes.
Now, you went by plane from Portugal and you flew to Zurich probably,
Yes.
and I took the train from Utrecht to Bern, which is
Right.
about 8 hours. So I was knackered when I got
can
out of the
imagine
train.
that.
And I went looking for the hotel. I made arrangements with my wife that I was allowed one night at Hotel Schweizerhof, because I said to her, if I'm not going to do it now, I'm never going to do it.
And it's a pretty expensive hotel.
It's a very expensive hotel. It's a
but
five-star hotel.
It's a very good hotel.
Yeah. So what I did, this is the hotel where Bond goes to make copies of Gumbold's office. That's it. And he copies all the documents from Count de Bluchamp.
Exactly.
And he stands on the balcony and he gets a copier from Sean Campbell and everything. So when I got from the train, I started looking for the hotel, and it's right next to the train station.
It's very convenient.
So I saw the hotel and I was like, oh my God, that's the hotel. And beforehand, I emailed them that I'm going to arrive on that particular day, would it be possible if I could go onto the balcony, because I'd like to see what the James Bond film, how it was shot. And they said, well, if it's not booked or anything, you might be able to go there. But when I got there, they actually booked me in the room right next to the actual room.
That's pretty good.
And I didn't know that. I think they kind of arranged that because I sent that email or something. Yeah. So I was going out of my mind. This is my first time in a 5-star hotel, and I went absolutely mad and crazy. And a lady went all the way up with me to my room, which they never do. They kind of, at reception, they always say, okay, well, have fun. Yeah. But now they actually walk with you. They open the door and everything. And she showed me the balcony, and I was jumping up and down out of pure joy. And I was looking at the church, and if you look down, you see that street. It's exactly the same image from when Bond looks down on the street.
Hasn't changed at all.
I turn around, and on the balcony next to me is George Lazenby, probably FaceTiming because he was on the phone.
Exactly.
Probably FaceTiming to his twin kids. It's like, what is going on here? And I became absolutely mad. And that's when I saw you as well. I just and I recognized you because we had a prior chat last year. Yeah. That was just crazy. It's really crazy. It's like, yeah.
That's funny because we were.
You just went to the hotel.
George Lazenby was actually on his way to Muren because they were not going to stay in Bern, but they had to drop me off at the Schweizerhof.
So Bern, it's not the capital of Switzerland, but it's
from what I understand, Switzerland doesn't have.
No, exactly, but it's considered to be the capital, and they did some shots over there in the film.
Yes.
But most of the weekend as well was in Muren, a little village on top of a mountain close to Peace Gloria.
Yeah.
So you were just on your way over there.
They were on their way because they were not going to stay in Bern, but the VIP tour was going to start from Bern.
Spend a day in Bern.
So they had to drop me off there, and obviously the hotel wanted to have George on the balcony and make some photos of it, for promotional purposes. So they had blocked off that room. That's room 411, which is the room they used for the filming. They had blocked that off for the whole day. But they just left the door open.
It was just
everybody could just walk in and out, which was pretty good. And so George went up there and he was on the balcony and he was like, "Have I been here before?" Yeah, George, you filmed here that balcony scene. And he
in his
honestly
defense, it's like a 2-minute scene.
Exactly, it's a very small scene, and it's like 50 years ago. And I wouldn't remember what I did. Well, I'm not 50 yet, but I wouldn't remember what I did like 30 years ago. So you can't really blame him because, and also it was one of the many things he did, and it was just a film. And we always tend to think that it's the most important thing in the world, that film, and then being on that balcony. But for him, it was just a balcony.
Yeah, but we've seen it like dozens of times, maybe hundreds of times, and over again.
Exactly. So he was there, and the good thing about the balcony is that it's on the outside of the hotel, and the hotel is apparently a monument, so they can't change anything on the exterior of the hotel.
Right.
So everything up until the drain pipe, the water drain
it's exactly
pipe,
the same.
Exactly the same because they're not allowed to change that.
They didn't use the room though.
No, they didn't use the room. Only the balcony.
That's studio, the actual office. Yeah.
You can see him walk out of the room onto the balcony, and he's looking down and he's looking at the church, which is just around the corner.
Yeah.
Then there's this huge building site opposite the hotel, which was the main train station, which they were building at the time, and that's where Campbell is, and and the big crane, and he hands them the copier machine. So George posed for photos, and we met you, which was fun. And then,
but you had stuff to do with the VIP people. There was a party or something, or
there was a small reception at in the evening. And the funny thing was that George and all the other guests, they had already left, and so we just had a drink. And that room 411 was still open. At some point, I after the party, I just walked up to that room, and I thought, well, I'm going to have a smoke. Why not do that on that balcony?
Why not?
And I was the only one there. And they had in the room, they had big TV screen, and they played Honor Majesty's the film. And I finished my smoke, and I went back into the room, and I was just sitting down on the bed, and I was watching that film in that room, which was a very special moment. And then suddenly, some of the other guys walked in. Joe Silock walked in, and Timothy Abbott walked in, and Jeff Wybo walked in. And just the four of us, we just sort of sat down, and we started watching the film, and started, how Bond fans are. We started picking on certain things, or
I don't like this, but
well, and was that was that Terrence Mountain? It became sort of a game to spot Terrence Mountain in the film. And the funny thing about the Schweizerhof is that they have a minibar, but contrary to all the other hotels, it's a complimentary minibar. So partly. But we all had free beers in our minibar. So at some point somebody said, hey, let's all get our free beer, So everybody went out and went to his own room and opened his fridge, got out the free beer, went back to room 411, and then we were having our complimentary beers in that room, watching the film. And it's one of those moments that I will never forget, because it's something that I didn't organize. But it just happened. Yeah.
That's so perfect. Yeah. Absolutely perfect. Well, because I couldn't join the VIP reception or anything, and it was a perfect day. I don't know how you organized the weather, but it was amazing. It was like 25 degrees Celsius, beautiful. Sunshine, blue skies, and I had some rest in the hotel first, but I just went out and walked through downtown area of Bern, and there are a few locations to visit where they actually shot the entrance of the hotel, which is a different building. Yep. There's like a main shopping street where they have the Zuidklogge. Yep. You can briefly see it in the background when Tracy and Draco are driving in the car. And of course the bear pit and the bridge. Exactly. And everything is doable within half an hour or 45 minutes.
It is.
And it's absolutely so incredibly beautiful, Bern as a city.
Well, especially with that nice weather.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about the weather is, of course, that the weather in Switzerland had been terrible for a month.
Yeah, but
terrible.
They knew we were coming.
They knew we were coming, and we were in Portugal at the time, and looking at the weather predictions, and the only thing we saw was fog, snow, rain. It was like, oh my God, how is this gonna work out? And when we got to Bern, it like blue sky, and it was unbelievable. From that day that we arrived, the weather had totally changed.
Yeah.
So, and that's a nice way to explore a city without weather.
It was, and I got back. It was late. I was tired. At some point, I wanted to go to my room, so I went up to my room. Was then 412, and obviously passing 411. I saw the door was open, so I just went in there again.
Yeah.
And I didn't see you, but there was another guy, and he was looking at. Also, I was watching TV. He was watching the scene from Gumbald's office, and on loop. So as soon as the scene ended, he pressed pause, he rewinded, and watched it again and again and again. That's fandom.
It is.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Let's go to the actual weekend in Muren and Peace Gloria. There are a few standout moments. I wrote down a few things that I really liked, but I'm sure you have your own stories. So I'm just going to name a few, and then we'll see what comes up. So it all began on Friday evening with a gala dinner at Hotel Palace.
Yes.
What can you tell me about that?
Well, the Palace Hotel is the place where a lot of the crew members stayed at the time, and it hasn't been a hotel for the last 5 years because it's shut down, went bankrupt or something, and it's still there. It's an empty hotel building, and the new owners or investors are starting to use it as a venue for events, and so we were able to use it for a dinner party, which is very nice. Everybody was dressed up nicely, and it was a great dinner. And they had some special guests there, local guests, people
that actually were there when they shot the film.
Exactly.
Yeah, and they could tell their stories.
Yeah, which was fun.
Yeah, it was really good. It was a long evening, but it was really good. It was a good start. And then for some reason, you decided that the next morning people should organize quite early for a bus tour. Not the VIP people, but other people. And some people didn't make the bus tour because they wanted to sleep rather than wake up early. But there was a tour through Grindelwald where they shot part of the
ice rink.
The ice rink. Just a tiny scene. What I really liked is that we had a tour guide in the bus, and she said that Grindelwald is such a popular place for tourists all year round because it's in a very wide valley, not as narrow as Lauterbrunnen, for instance. So they have people in the winter for winter sports, but in the summer for hiking and stuff like that. That there are 4,000 people living there, but they have 130,000 beds in the village.
It's amazing.
That's incredible. Yeah, it's mind-boggling. Yeah,
it is. Yeah. And it's beautiful. You have a great view of the Eiger mountain.
That's the tallest mountain, right? The Eiger. It's over 4 kilometers. Yeah. It's really tall. Yeah. So there was also a walking tour through Lauterbrunnen. That's the town where...
Well, it was actually, there was a walking tour through Muren.
What? That was on the Sunday, I believe.
But on Saturday as well.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So you can choose whenever you do. Okay, I did all that stuff on Saturday.
Yeah, different groups have had different...
plans. Right. So I went through Lauterbrunnen on the Saturday in the horse carriage, the original horse carriage, not the original horse, the original carriage.
And the original driver.
And the original driver, yeah, that was fun. And one of the highlights, it has to be, and you've done this, was a helicopter flight.
That was unbelievable.
What was the helicopter flight, Martijn?
What it was, we all had the option, everybody had to pay for that additionally, but we had the option to take a 45-minute helicopter flight, and you could have 5 people per helicopter, and they just flew you to the, I don't know the name of the glacier. People know, but I don't.
You went on top of one of the mountains.
On top of one of the mountains, and that was the area where they filmed a lot of the ski scenes. I mean, it's difficult to recognize anything when there's so much snow. But I've seen some screenshots of people
they compare the screenshots to the photos
and they
made.
actually found matching places.
Wow, that's dedication, man.
It is. But the helicopter just dropped you off. They just landed there, and
it's about halfway.
Halfway.
Yeah.
You were at 3,500 meters, and you can get out for, I don't know, just a few minutes, and we threw some snowballs at each other. And then we got it back into the helicopter again. But, with that beautiful blue sky, and there's Alps everywhere, it's such I had never seen anything like that.
No, it was absolutely amazing. And I was suffering quite a bit from vertigo at that time. Also in the cable cars. When it starts to move, I just felt it in my stomach. But still, I was kind of dreading the helicopter flight a bit. But in the end, I was sitting up front. There were 3 people in the back, and I was next to the pilot. And there's a glass floor with your feet. So you look down and you can actually see the villages when you're taking off and everything. And you go through the mountains, and everything was white when you are up on the mountains.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And it was incredible. And after the stop on top of the mountain, I took some rocks with me because that's what you do.
I took snow.
You took snow with you? Do you still have it? I still have the rocks. But we changed seatings because I thought it would be nice for one of the other guys to sit up front, but also I was kind of scared to go back up front again. So I was in the back, in the middle, and I looked to the side. I was sitting next to Mark, and Mark, you can't talk to each other in a helicopter because it's a lot of noise. So we all had a headset on and a microphone. And he was smart enough. I don't know. Somebody gave him this idea. He had earplugs.
Oh, really?
Underneath the headset.
Right.
And he was listening to the soundtrack of Majesty's.
Oh, wow.
At the same time that we were passing in the helicopter Peace Gloria.
Ooh,
and he was enjoying it so much. You can see him head banging and everything. He was loving it. That's a really good idea.
That's a really good idea. That's true.
Yeah, I wish I thought of that.
Yeah. That's very smart. Absolutely. Yeah.
But I made a video of the whole thing and I edited in the music anyway. But it's not the same. But it was really cool. So
smart.
How did you come up with this idea of arranging a helicopter flight?
It's something actually the Piz Gloria people, the Schildhornbahn people came up with it actually. They said,
would you like to?
Yeah, would it be an idea if we offer people that?
Oh, wow.
In the end, I think 90 people took
that
flight.
A lot of flights, That was really good. You're never going to top that.
I don't think so, no. Not with that weather, those circumstances. That was really amazing.
Yeah,
and I'd never flown in a
no vertigo either.
No vertigo, but I had always thought that a helicopter would be much more bumpy, but it was actually a rather smooth helicopter flight.
Great pilots, definitely. And then we had the party up at Piz Gloria.
Yes.
First at Berg, it's like the last stop.
Yeah, that's the last stop before you get to Piz Gloria. And they had a very nice cocktail reception, and everybody dressed up in their tuxedos or at least nice suits, and that always gives it something special. People weren't required to do that, but I just left it open. And but you know that there's always a certain group that's going to do that, and everybody dressed up nicely. That gives it something special.
And we were standing there in the sunshine with a vodka martini.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. And they had, little snacks and drinks. And everybody was so much looking forward to that evening. So the whole Everybody was in a good mood.
So we went up to Piz Gloria.
Yep.
And there was an excellent dinner arranged. Everybody had some poker chips.
Yep.
For some reason.
Yep.
You had all these little surprises. That was so much fun.
There were a lot of surprises, also for me, because I didn't arrange everything. You know, they had this the special...
like a pin to put on your
exactly.
coat?
That was purely
Jacket?
Schildhornbaan who arranged that.
Yeah.
So that was fun. And the poker chips were a lot of fun too, because everybody could play.
Yeah, because there was a blackjack table and a
Yep.
roulette table, and I'm not really a gambling man, Fraulein. But so I just went there and I played some blackjack, and there was a lovely lady, and she was telling me exactly what to do.
Yeah.
Because I kind of know how to play it, but it's different when you have strict rules.
Yeah.
Strict rules of golf.
Yeah.
But,
that's true.
But it was so much fun.
It was a lot of fun, and the dinner was good. You know, and the restaurant. I don't know if everybody knows it, but it's revolving. So I think it takes about an hour to make full.
I don't think that long actually.
No,
It goes quite quickly.
Half an hour maybe.
I lost my table a couple of times.
Yeah, you're always looking for tables, and then you get disorientated. Very easily.
Yeah, especially when you're that high up, and then something extraordinary happened because there was a concert.
Well, there was one extraordinary thing that happened before that. That was the sunset.
Right, yeah.
And the sunset, they only have that like 2 or 3 times a year, apparently, such a sunset. And it was a sunset just like in the film, you know, when they had the choppers approaching.
Perfect. It was perfect.
Unbelievable. And it, you know, it's.
I assume they have that every day.
No, apparently they don't.
Wow.
And it was really special because I know people who've been up to Piz Gloria 4 times and have never had any view at all because it was so foggy. And so you really have to be extremely lucky with the weather. And we were, and it's one of those things you just can't control.
No.
But it just happened.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost everybody was outside taking pictures and enjoying the view and the sunset. It was perfect. And then the concert started. Cue the music. They brought the entire band, or almost the entire band, I'm not sure, but all the way up the mountain.
Exactly. And
it's a shame we couldn't film. I really didn't like that.
Yeah.
I can imagine. I can understand. But yeah, I was trying to capture as much as I could on film. And then you suddenly walked in on everybody, said, no filming, no filming. It's like, oh, no.
No, well, that was a special request from the band. And, you know, and it served 2 purposes. Of course, they want to do something with their own recordings.
Because there were many cameras already present.
There were many cameras.
Yeah.
And, of course, they're going to do something with that. And the second thing was they and I can understand that. They don't like playing in front of 40, 50...
people holding a telephone.
Exactly.
Yeah. But still, it was amazing because I was standing right up front, as close as I'm sitting to you right now. I was standing next to Warren Ringham with his trumpet, and he was talking us through the entire evening, and the music was absolutely perfect.
It was unbelievable.
They had a very, very incredible medley they made out of 20 minutes of Majesty's music.
Yes.
Yeah. And then they had a small break for about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then after the break, something funny happened. Because I was, again, standing right up there, and then I heard from all the way back, I heard Stephen Saltzman, and the son of Harry Saltzman, shouting, "We're going to go right up front, dear." And he was pulling his wife along, like Moses through the sea. He was trying to get in front of everybody, and he was standing there, and his wife took out her phone, and she filmed the entire second half of the concert with her phone, and nobody dared to say a word.
Oh, yeah. I know people filmed it.
That's some sort of privilege I think they took. But then right after that 20 minutes of Majesty's medley, Stephen Saltzman walked up to the microphone and he hugged Warren and he said, "You made my dad proud."
Really? Yeah.
That was such a wonderful moment.
I thanked him for that because I knew that would mean a lot for the band. And it was such a nice thing to say because it's really good. Special moment.
Yeah, it was really special. You had to have been there. Unfortunately, you had to have been there.
You know, to hear that music being played live, you're at that location with these beautiful mountains, the original location, and you have the original actors and actresses, who, you know, cast and crew members around. That's an unbelievable experience.
Indeed. Anything else about the Saturday? Or you want to move on to the Sunday?
The Saturday. Well, one of the things that unfortunately didn't happen was that Warren and his band had originally planned to have the Bond girls, you know, the Angels of Death, up on stage.
Right.
And they were going to do you know how Christmas trees are going?
Yeah.
And it became so late, in the evening, and the ladies just wanted to go home. They were so tired. It had been a very long day for them as well. So at some point, like 5 minutes before they were supposed to be on, they decided, we're going to go home.
Okay.
And they made their way to the cable car, and I was just like, I heard it from somebody who said, no, they're going. I'm like, no way, they're not going. So I'm running down the stairs, trying to catch them, trying to bring them back, and I couldn't find them. So I went up again, and I went down again, and I went up again. You know, at 3,000 meters, I'm a smoker. I'll never do that again. Oh, my God. So in the end, I couldn't find them, and they apparently had left. And so
it didn't happen?
That didn't happen.
Oh, well. You can't have everything.
No, you can't have it all. No.
I also missed out on something, but that was on a Sunday. Yeah. So Sunday was a bit of a lazy day, I think, for most people.
That was funny, yeah. Sunday was a funny day.
Why was it funny?
Because actually the whole event should have ended on Saturday. You know, you could all say your goodbyes to everybody, and that would have been a great ending. But somehow there was still the Sunday. And
people wanted more.
People wanted more, yeah, but it you know, there wasn't really anything very special planned for the Sunday.
Well, you had the walking tour, like you mentioned.
There was a walking tour, yeah, that's true.
That you nearly missed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was the first morning that I actually had nothing planned at 9 o'clock. So that was the first morning I could actually stay in bed a little longer, and I got up and I just walked out into town, and I found this little coffee shop where they had croissants, and I had something to eat, and I had a cup of coffee. And I was sitting there on this bench in the sun, half in the sun, and every now and then somebody from our group walked by, and we had a little chat, and it was such a wonderful morning, until somebody at some point said, oh, it's 11:10, I'll miss the Muren walk, the town walk. And he sort of ran off, and I'm like, Muren town walk? Oh my God, I'm supposed to lead that Muren town walk.
Well, he was on time then.
He was on time. Yeah, he made it.
That's where you went to the location with the bell shed and
the bobsleigh
run and everything. Yeah. And I actually ran into you there at the cafe. I was looking for a place to have some lunch.
Yeah.
The supermarket was closed on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And I got some coffee, and I just sat next to you, and you were talking to some guy I didn't know, and he was saying things about back in the day when Saltzman and Broccoli were producing things.
He kind of did like he knew a lot about it.
Yeah, and then I asked the question like, well, but how do you know all that stuff? I mean, what do you know about it? And he said, well, I'm John Cork. I wrote all those books. I was like, oh, fucking hell. That was the moment I wanted to shoot myself.
There's no way you could have known.
No, and I like that because I told him that. We made up, fortunately, and we had a good chat, and we took some pictures, and he was very sociable. But he said, it's good that you don't recognize me. You're not supposed to recognize me. And that was kind of awkward.
He's very knowledgeable,
He
so
is,
much.
Yeah. That was amazing, yeah. So, but for the rest, the Sunday was very relaxing.
It was, yeah.
I distinctly remember, I went up to Piz Gloria for the last time, and it was about 3:30, and then I remembered, because I spent so much time at Piz Gloria just in the restaurant, just outside, walking about the same old things again and again and again, and then all of a sudden I remembered, wait a minute, I'm supposed to go to the wheelhouse.
Right.
So I went up to reception, and they asked around and everything, and they said, I'm sorry, you can't do it anymore. It was at 1, at 2, and at 3.
Really?
That was it. I was like, you're kidding me? This is the only opportunity I'll ever have. And they say, yes, we're sorry. It's like, oh, come on.
Oh, my God.
And I didn't see it.
I didn't know that.
I didn't see the wheelhouse.
Oh, wow.
But, you can't have everything, I suppose.
That's one of the other things, communication is key here. And I always told everybody that I don't know how they're going to arrange that. I suppose you just go up there, and there must be somebody there who will open the door for you. Or,
I was too late by half an hour, and I'm never going to see the wheelhouse. But that's okay. Yeah, that's the way it goes.
Well, that's a good reason to return.
Yeah. Oh, my son really is so envious that I went up there. I told him I'm just going to go on a reconnaissance, and we're going to come back here, definitely. And my wife loves Switzerland and the Alps and everything, so it's going to be all right.
Yeah.
But I was kind of sad. I was going down the cable car for the last time, and all I had to do was wait for the homeward journey the next day on Monday.
Yeah.
And I went up to my hotel. It was about 5 o'clock or something. And I was just sad.
Yeah.
And I was feeling sorry for myself. And I was by myself in the hotel. And I was like, this is not how it's supposed to end. No. So I just went out there and I walked over to Hotel Eiger. And all these guys were there from James Bond Radio, right. And the whole group from the UK. And I know these guys because I went on a few trips with many of them. And I managed to worm myself into their group, and I could hook up for dinner. That's and there was this perfect dinner at Hotel Eiger. And it happened to be in the same room where you guys, with all the VIPs, had their farewell dinner.
Exactly, yeah.
So that was kind of like a treat, you know. There I was sitting by myself in my hotel room feeling sorry. But then I thought, well, if you don't do anything, nothing will ever happen. So I just went out there. And then in the end, we were hanging about our tables. And this was kind of awkward because we were finished with our dinner. But we couldn't leave yet because all of a sudden there were speeches going on, right. Farewell speeches of Anders and George and you get to say something. And we were kind of entrapped inside the room because the exit was we had to pass through the entire speech area. So we were just a group of 5 or 6 people. We were just standing there. We thought if we keep really silent, maybe nobody will notice us. But that was a special moment, man.
It was, and actually I hadn't arranged it. It was Anders who had arranged it. He was taking care of all these VIP guests.
So you had John Glenn, you had Vic Armstrong, you had Angels of Death, you had Saltzman, you had Terry, you had George, you had all these people, and we were just like a fly on the wall. And you were saying your goodbyes and your thank yous.
Yeah, but I was actually, Anders asked me an hour in advance, like, you want to join the dinner as well? Because I normally go my own way.
It was a surprise for you as well.
Well, yeah, I just thought, maybe, I hadn't arranged anything yet. So okay, I'll be there. So
dinner might be nice.
It was good. Yeah.
It was a perfect ending.
It was. And, all these, especially the ladies, they're all so very nice. Jenny Henley, for instance, she's such a sweetheart. And Silvana, of course. And so they're all very down to earth. And John Glenn as well. It's a pleasure talking with that man. It's nice. It's nice to they're all... It was a big reunion for them as well.
Yeah.
It was very, very good. A lot of people hadn't seen each other in a long time. That was good.
And then the inevitable homeward journey came the next day.
I had one highlight before that, which actually happened on Sunday afternoon. Because the James Bond radio guys had discovered that little football pitch
in Mürren.
And
it's crazy. You're up in the mountains. It's about 2.5 kilometers up in the mountain, but people do karate there. You have tennis courts. You have football fields.
They have this outdoor football field with boardings around it and two goals, of course. So some of the James Bond radio guys said, shall we play football tomorrow? And someone was in charge of arranging a ball, and we all agreed to meet there at 4 o'clock. And in the end, we were there at 4 o'clock with, I think, maybe 6 or 7.
This is a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah. And at some point, some local guy turns up in his football shoes and his Cristiano Ronaldo shirt on. So we dubbed him Cristiano. And he joined the football as well. And it was such a spontaneous thing. That's one of the other things that I didn't arrange, and those are the things that I honestly enjoyed the most.
Yeah. But it's really about connecting to people.
It is. And it's such a great group of people. You can't connect with everybody, but most of the people are so good.
And there were hundreds of them.
Yeah, and you all share the same passion. We all share our James Bond passion and our passion of the James Bond lifestyle. And so, it's fun to hang out with each other.
Yeah, it was. It absolutely was. So, what help did you get into arranging all this? You already talked about Schildhorn and the hotel,
Bahn.
And other people chipped in as well?
Well, the Schildhorn Bahn and the Palacio Hotel were the main supporters of the event because they handled most of the things. But then, I hooked up with Anders because he's George's manager nowadays, and so that was easy access to George, and Anders has a lot of connections with all the stars, and he'd done the same on previous events for the Schildhorn Bahn,
right?
So they all know him, and so that was his part. And then we had a crew, Marcus Hartmann, the chairman of the Swiss James Bond Club. He was part of our crew. Marcus speaks Portuguese. So he was very helpful in Portugal as well. And being Swiss, he's helpful in Switzerland as well, of course. And his wife is Brazilian, and her sister, who lives in Estoril, is obviously also Brazilian. So they all speak Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese. So they were all part of the Portuguese team. And in Switzerland, we had Mikael Hackel, who's now the 007collector.com website. And Mikael is such a great guy, and he helped us out with the tours. He has a lot of knowledge on the local things. So it all comes down to finding a right match of people, and then something beautiful can blossom.
If you look back, is there anything you would change if you had to do it all again? Or is it just in the details?
It's in the details. Yeah, I mean, everything was so perfect now. The general picture was so perfect. If you would do it next year, it's not going to be the same, because you're never going to have the same circumstances, the same people, the same weather. It's one of those once in a lifetime things. Yeah, there are obviously things I would do differently, but small things.
Okay. Well, we'll leave it at that. But it's not going to be the last time, is it? I mean,
no.
You're not somebody that can just sit still.
No.
There are more films that will turn 50.
Exactly. And
are you already slightly planning and scheming things?
There's not really a 50th anniversary next year. But fortunately, I started with Dirk on the tracks of 007 in 1995. So that's 25 years ago.
That's worth a celebration.
That's a good reason to go somewhere. And one of the first stories we ever wrote was Faces of Asia, which was about Hong Kong and Thailand. So the idea is to go to Hong Kong and Thailand next year. But that's going to be different from the Honor Majesty celebration, because you can't go to Hong Kong and Thailand with 200 people. It's going to be more like the Japan trip, like a small group, which you can handle. So
if you want to be included with that, you have to be quick.
Yeah.
Basically, it means you have to go to your website, sign up for the newsletter or something,
and then you'll be notified.
And then
when it all materializes,
you have to be very quick to reply.
That's going to be a tough one to join, because I know there's a lot of people who want to go there.
Does it include James Bond Island from the man with the golden gun?
Yeah.
Skyfall.
You can do it without
Hong Kong.
Hong Kong, Man with the Golden Gun, Tomorrow Never Dies.
Yeah.
But the big one everybody's already looking out for is the 2021.
You're all going to go to Amsterdam. Look at the canals.
We're all going to go to Amsterdam, because that's the main location from that film.
South Africa?
No, Amsterdam, just Amsterdam. Now everybody's just we're obviously thinking about going to Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Which has a lot of potential. Let's keep it to that.
So that's what you're focusing on now.
Yes,
in Asia and Las Vegas.
Yeah, and maybe I had some ideas about Jamaica as well in 2022, because that would be
2022,
the 60th anniversary of Dr. No.
That's going to be so sweet. You have Dr. No,
you need
Live and Let Die, and the new Bond film.
Exactly,
which doesn't have a title the moment we're recording this yet.
So. There's lots of stuff.
It's good to know that you're still planning. Yeah. Anything else? Anything we've missed? Any anecdotes? Any stories?
There's lots of anecdotes we've missed, but I'm not going to tell them all.
I had to promise the guys I was in the helicopter with, because they knew I was afraid of heights. I had to promise them whatever happens in Switzerland stays in Switzerland. Yeah, like you said about Portugal. Yeah. But, I think we did our best. We shared some good stories.
Oh yeah. Everybody has his or her own stories.
Yeah, but it's good to reflect on it and think back. Yeah, that's good. So, shall we go to the closing 00 question?
Sure.
Okay. If you could go on a date with a Bond girl, who would you choose and what would you do?
Oh, my. What would I do and with who? I think I would go for Diana Rigg. And I would take her to the Gincho Beach, and I'll show her that she's one of the few of the cast who hasn't returned there yet.
And hopefully she won't run away.
Exactly. Hopefully she won't try to drown herself. No, I think
you
could
can
have
the beach with Diana Rigg and then go to the hotel
like
and
something like that.
Oh, sounds good. Sounds really good. Yeah.
Well,
Martijn,
that's talking about Diana Rigg. That's one of the things that maybe is worth mentioning. And one of the things I really regret that during that whole 9-day period, a lot of times I forgot to mention Diana's name. You know, you always focus on the people who are present at the VIP guests, and I never even considered mentioning Diana.
But you did invite her?
We invited her, and we were actually pretty close to getting her as well, because she didn't object. Because at first I thought maybe she didn't even want to go there at all, you know, with George.
She's well into her 80s now, right?
She is, and but she actually was open for it, and only her shooting schedule stood in the way.
She's too active still.
She is. I mean, she was in the Game of Thrones, and now she's doing something else. She's filming something else, and she just couldn't make it. And the same with Joanna. The same with Joanna Lumley. Joanna sent a very nice letter, and she just apologized for not being able to be there because she really wanted to come. So that's worth mentioning.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So, how do you take your vodka martini?
I don't really mind. You know, however they
as long as it has plenty of alcohol.
Yeah, I'm fine with any.
You're easygoing. Okay, good. Is there a particular Bond song or music cue that you like?
Yeah, that's A View to a Kill, Duran Duran.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll. It's not very Majesty's like.
Yeah, not at all. No. I like the John Barry music, and I actually started listening to the Diamonds Are Forever soundtrack.
That's a really good one.
That is a really good one.
Really has some perfect songs.
I hadn't heard it in quite a while, and
I'm gonna
it.
Change the question now. I just decided I'm gonna change it for you. What music from Majesty's do you prefer? Because I'm gonna add that at the end of the podcast. So I'm not gonna add A View to a Kill. I'm sorry. This is a Majesty's interview. Yeah. And you can't say Christmas trees.
No, it's not gonna be Christmas trees. No, I always like the Gumboldt office scene music.
Oh, that's haunting.
It is very haunting.
You sure you want to end the podcast on that?
Maybe you should just play the theme song. Now, I mean, it has a lot of it has a lot of great music in it, and also the Attack on Piz Gloria. Has good music.
Want to go with that one?
Shall we?
Okay, that's better than Gumbold's office, I think.
All right.
Well, to end. Okay. Then finally, Martijn, can you quote the famous line? "My name is Bond, James Bond."
Gonna give it a try. My name is Bond, James Bond.
Well, that was my talk with Martijn Mulder on the amazing event celebrating the 50th anniversary of On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And while I was editing our conversation and listening back to our stories, it really struck me how special it was. Many things were thoroughly prepared and expertly executed, but it were especially the unprepared moments, the spontaneous actions, the happenstance of things that made it into such a unique experience. And looking back and reflecting upon my time in Bern and Hotel Schweizerhof and my fear of heights going up the mountain and even the helicopter, and cue the music concert, everything was just perfect. But most of all, I have such fond memories of meeting friends and making new ones. It's a rare thing. Now, I'd like to address a few things at the end of this podcast. First of all, if you've enjoyed listening to our stories, but you want to look at how everything was, you could watch my location video. It's online, on YouTube, and you can follow my journey throughout the entire Swiss weekend. You'll see Bern, the hotel, the balcony, and all the other locations. You'll see Lauterbrunnen and Muren. You'll see the helicopter flight, and I added in the scenes from the film so you can compare how it was 50 years ago and how it is now. Now, I do speak Dutch in the video, but I added English subtitles within the YouTube player. Just click on the icon in the bottom. Yeah, you'll figure it out. The link to the video is in the show notes. Second, everybody visit the website of Martijn onthetracksOf007.com and sign up for his newsletter and the Facebook group so you'll know when new events will take place. Also, you can find and buy his book via the website. And third, we have some more giveaways. Martijn was kind enough to give me 2 On Her Majesty's Secret Service calendars. They are for 2019, so half of the year is gone already, but the images of these calendars are simply stunning. And he also gave me 2 event brochures of OHMSS 50, which also have beautiful photos, articles, maps, and everything. So I have 2 sets of a calendar and an event brochure that you could win. All you have to do is send us your favorite Bond location photo and we'll randomly draw 2 winners. You can send your photo via email to moneypenny@the00files.com, and the deadline is August 10th, which is a month after this podcast is published. The 4th thing is music. Eventually, Martijn decided on the music during the attack of Peace Gloria. Now, the actual track title is Battle at Peace Gloria, which I will play shortly. But I have another surprise for you. I got in touch with Warren Ringham from Cue the Music, and I got the recording of their live performance of the theme of On Her Majesty's Secret Service that they did on top of Peace Gloria. Now, normally you can only get this recording if you support Cue the Music on Patreon, but Warren very kindly let me use this one track to end the podcast on. So after listening to Battle at Peace Gloria from the soundtrack, you can listen to Cue the Music's live performance of the Majesty's theme. Okay, one last thing before I go. Please, please, please go to patreon.com and support Cue the Music. If you do, you get full access to their entire Peace Gloria performance, including their insane 18-minute Majesty suite. And that brings me to the end of this podcast. If you've enjoyed it, please let us know and share it with others. And if you want to get in touch, please email us at moneypenny@the00files.com or simply search for us on social media. Until next time, everybody, the 00 Files will return.